Let's look at the data. All around us, the signals feel completely chaotic. One headline screams about a booming economy, while the next talks about food banks being completely overwhelmed. So what is going on? Well, it turns out the signals aren't mixed. They're just being sent to two totally different groups. Today, we're decoding at Divergence to find out what's really happening. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into the hard data that shows this diverging economic reality. Then, we're going to look at how politics is basically throwing fuel on the fire. After that, and this is key, we'll pull back the curtain on the narrative machine that shapes how we see all of this. Finally, we'll land on what this actually means for your wealth and your happiness. Let's get into it. And this slide right here gets right to the heart of it. We're living in what you could call a K-shaped reality. You've got the top leg of the K, where one of our sources just puts it bluntly: the wealthy always do better. But then you look at the bottom leg of that K, and it tells a very different story, with the Federal Reserve itself reporting a huge spike in demand for food assistance. These aren't two separate worlds. They're two paths in the exact same economy, splitting apart and heading in opposite directions. So let's start right there with that divergence. We're going to look at the cold, hard data that shows exactly how this economic divide is playing out on the ground and how it's affecting businesses and families in really tangible ways. Now, this isn't somebody's opinion piece. These are direct findings from the Federal Reserve's own nationwide survey, the Beige Book. And what are they saying? Businesses are reporting that tariffs are absolutely crushing their profit margins. They're struggling to hire. And all that pressure? It's rolling downhill to us, the consumers, who are fighting back against price hikes. And where does that lead? Well, look at the next point: strained food banks. You can draw a straight line through this data. And here is a real-world casualty of that strain: Value City Furniture, a 75-year-old American company. We're talking 120 stores gone, filing for Chapter 11. This isn't just some abstract number. That's over 1,300 employees, a household name, just vanishing. And one of the key reasons they cited? The tariff environment. And here's exactly how that pressure gets passed on to you. Tariffs aren't some abstract economic theory. Look at these numbers. The average tariff on toys, it jumped from 0 to over 22%. Christmas decorations went from less than 1% to over 23%. This is, for all intents and purposes, a direct tax on a family's budget. You know, this comment from the source material just nails the sentiment on the street. People don't see the collapse of a retailer like Value City as just some isolated event. They see it for what it is: a canary in the coal mine. It's a warning signal that the bottom leg of that K we talked about is starting to buckle under the pressure. But here's the thing: none of this economic stuff is happening in a vacuum. So let's pivot to our next section, because we need to talk about how politics and global events are acting as a massive accelerant, literally pouring gasoline on this fire and cranking up the feeling of chaos and uncertainty. And that instability isn't just economic. According to one source, you have 60 different attorneys describing a year of total chaos at the Justice Department. They're calling it a brain drain of experienced prosecutors. For instance, the National Security Unit in D.C. reportedly down by half. When you lose that kind of deep institutional knowledge, it creates a profound uncertainty about the stability of our systems themselves. And then you get these moments of, well, just unprecedented action. This is a direct announcement, closing the airspace over and around Venezuela. The source material points out that this was done with, let's just say, unclear legal authority. It creates massive disruption and leaves everyone asking, what happens now? It's a perfect example of how a single political action can inject a huge, unpredictable shock into the entire system. And you know what? These geopolitical moves have direct and sometimes deadly consequences right here at home. After strikes on drug boats in the Caribbean, what happened? The price of cocaine reportedly shot up by as much as 45%. And this isn't happening in some fantasy world. It's happening in a country where a drug epidemic is claiming roughly 100,000 lives every single year. A decision made hundreds of miles away has a direct, tangible impact on the streets of our cities. Okay, so we've seen the diverging data. We've seen the political chaos. But now we're gonna make a major shift, a really important one. We're gonna move from talking about what is happening to why we all see it so differently. This is about the stories we tell ourselves. And honestly, it might be the most important piece of this entire puzzle. Financial writer Morgan Housel gives us the key to unlock this whole section. He argues that the future is always uncertain. The only thing that ever changes is how aware we are of the risks. Those periods that feel super stable, like right before 2008 or right before COVID, they're often the most dangerous times. We just can't see it yet. Housel's core idea is that markets are not just about numbers. He has this brilliant line where he says, a market is a number from today multiplied by a story about tomorrow. And those stories, those narratives can become incredibly powerful. They can drive entire markets for years, sometimes completely disconnected from the actual fundamentals. Now think about this for a second. We all like to believe we see the world objectively, right? But Housel says that what you have personally experienced, which is just a tiny, tiny fraction of 1% of everything that's ever happened, forms about 80% of your worldview. Nothing is more persuasive than what you've seen with your own two eyes, which means, in a very real way, we are all operating in fundamentally different realities. And this slide is the perfect illustration of that. These are actual comments from the source material. You give people the exact same data, and they tell completely different stories. Frosty sees spiraling debt and the drums of war. SoCal Jim sees the system just working the way it's supposed to. And Ben W., he's not even looking at the data. He's focused on the perceived bias of the person presenting it. It's the same facts, but three totally different narratives, each one driven by a unique personal lens. So, if our whole perception of the world is so heavily shaped by our own personal story, what can we actually do about it? Well, in this section, let's get practical. We're going to apply these psychological insights to our own lives and move from theory to a new, actionable mindset about money. Housel points out this really fascinating contradiction. The skills that it takes to get rich, optimism, taking huge risks, are often the exact opposite of the skills you need to stay rich, which demand paranoia and playing defense. It's almost like you need to be two different people. And it explains why we hear so many stories of people who are geniuses at making a fortune and absolutely clueless when it comes to keeping it. And that leads us to this crucial distinction between financial wealth and psychological wealth. Financial wealth is easy. It's the number on your balance sheet. But psychological wealth, the way Housel defines it, is having control over your time and your expectations. I mean, you can be a billionaire and still be psychologically broke if what you want is always just out of reach. This quote gets to the very heart of it. True wealth isn't about buying a bigger car to impress the neighbors. Housel says the most valuable asset you can have is simply not needing to impress anyone. The moment you realize that nobody is thinking about you as much as you are, that's liberating. Using money to buy your own independence rather than to peacock for others is priceless. So here's a simple 3-step framework you can take away from all this. Step 1, just recognize that we tend to romanticize the past, mainly because we already know how the story ends. Step 2, understand that the present is almost never as bad as the 24/7 negative news cycle makes it out to be. And step 3, the ultimate goal of money isn't status, it's independence, the freedom to control your own time. Okay, let's land the plane here and bring this all together for our final takeaway. We've seen a diverging economy, we've seen the political accelerants, and we've talked about the powerful stories that shape how we see it all. So what's the one signal we should be trying to hear through all of this noise? The final takeaway really boils down to this one question. If we accept the premise that our memory of the past is just a romanticized story, and our view of the present is skewed by a constant barrage of negativity, then the future isn't written yet. The economic and political chaos out there is real, absolutely. But the meaning we assign to it and the story we choose to tell ourselves about tomorrow, at the end of the day, that is entirely up to us. Stay disciplined, stay liquid. Now remember, this analysis is for educational purposes only, and it's based on current data, which can and does change rapidly. Always do your own due diligence. We are tracking these flows in real time. So while you analyze the next move, check out the tools in the description. You can sign up for Public to get $20 in free assets, check Webull for that BTC promo, or look into NVDA on Moomoo. All the links are down below. And hey, like and subscribe for more deep dive analysis.